Story 1. I made absolutely sure I would not have any children by having a vasectomy last year. However, when I got home from the hospital after the operation, they were still there. Story 2. To gain or seek any reward from external sources. Could be financial or emotional. Essentially, it makes the child a means to an end. Story 3. To please anyone other than themselves, for example, having a child just to please one's parents or significant other because they feel they should. If you do not want it, do not do it. Nothing is worse for a child than growing up unwanted. Story 4. Because someone else thinks you should. Because you do not want to die alone. Because your marriage is a disaster and your spouse is talking about divorce. Any reason other than wanting to watch your children grow into healthy, responsible young adults so that they can have a better life than you did is not a good sign. Story 5. My parents told me they had us so we would help around the house and care for them when they got older. This is one of the reasons I do not want to have children. Story 6. This is not the worst, but I feel bad for women who have children in their late 30s because their maternal clock is ticking. They might not make good parents, but they feel like it is something they have to do. Story 7. Now in Russia, there is propaganda in school lessons encouraging childbirth. Children are examined for reproductive health starting at 6 years old, and then each year beginning at 13 for both sexes. I think the worst part is the government saying, "We should." Story 8. In Australia in the early to mid-2000s, there was a $5,000 baby bonus given to support new parents. It was abolished because many drug addicts were having children to receive the money to buy drugs, and the children became the state's problem. I think that is the worst reason to have a child. Story 9. As an organ donor for an older sibling with medical issues, it happens, and it is upsetting. The poor child has no recourse. Story 10. They like the idea of being a parent to boost their ego. They want people to respect them just because they have a child. Story 11. To try to change your boyfriend from being criminal or abusive to being fatherly, civilized, and peaceful. Story 12. To have people take care of you when you are old. To carry on your legacy. But in both scenarios, the person is either very poor or not a millionaire. Story 13. Because the other person wanted a child. I once met a man with 2 children from 2 different women, paying support for both. He did not have any money left. When I asked him why he did that, he said, "She wanted a child." Story 14. Attention. My sister treated the baby poorly when others were not giving her attention. Then she completely neglected him when he was a toddler until he was taken by Child Protective Services. She is difficult to deal with, and I do not talk to her anymore. Story 15. People said I would regret not having children because I would end up alone. Well, it would be far worse to have children and still end up alone, as I know many people have. Story 16. To qualify for government assistance or benefits like the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children. It is intended for people who need it. You should not have a child just to receive it. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program is not perfect, but it exists to help the rest of us. Story 17. There are many bad reasons and few good ones, but I always felt it was a particular kind of wrong to have a child just to live vicariously through them or to fulfill codependent tendencies. It is rarely a conscious reason, but still. Story 18. In order to sexually assault them before birth. Story 19. To reach something small that has rolled under a piece of furniture, use a simple tool. After about 3 or 4 years old, children get pretty good at using their thin arms to grab things in hard-to-reach places. However, if you are just trying to reach something that rolled under the TV stand, use a ruler or something similar to push it out. It will be much easier in the long run. Story 20. Because you want a baby rather than to be a parent of a child who will grow, develop, and contribute to a lifelong relationship. Story 21. To do it because society expects you to. To not even think about it, to just have a child without any plan whatsoever. Story 22. For financial support, where I live, mothers receive money from the government to raise their children. It is not a large amount, but the more children you have, the more money you receive. Story 23. Not the worst reason, but people who know each other for a few months and decide they want a child. Exceptions aside, This never ends well. Story 24. Any reason if you do not actually want children, but I loathe the idea of having a child so you will have someone to care for you when you are old. Or if you have a child, so there will be someone to care for another child in the family who will always require care. Story 25. Feeling sorry for unborn children, those little souls waiting to be conceived. Story 26. To better a relationship, we had our boys at 16 and 17. We are still together. They are 23 and almost 21. So what else can better a relationship? I would like to know. Story 27. Duty. Christianity often mentions how it is your duty to have a child with your marital partner. However, you should never do it solely as a duty. The child will feel unwanted, even hated or resented. A parent cannot love a child they never wanted. Story 28. I have 3 examples. 1. A woman became pregnant because her boyfriend was about to leave her since he desired a child, while she did not. A person wants children because they want someone to care for them when they grow old. The parents of the bride and groom desire grandchildren. These are the worst reasons I have seen and heard. I myself am child-free by choice and did not give in to any peer pressure. Believe me, in this society there is a lot of pressure. Story 29. When I was a child, I knew a woman who had a child every couple of years, so she would not have to work and could stay on government assistance. Story 30. Having a baby fever. Society often romanticizes baby fever as a calling, but in reality, it is just a feeling, not a qualification. That feeling completely passed for me and never returned as soon as I got my dog. Story 31. To maximize the divorce settlement amount, withhold necessary food and medical needs from the child just enough to avoid detection, and keep the remainder for herself. Story 32. To be the caretaker for a disabled sibling. Imagine burdening a child with that responsibility for the rest of their life. Story 33. I will be vague as this encompasses many smaller scenarios, but having a child because you feel obligated in some way, such as social, familial, spousal, or religious pressure, can be problematic. Having children is a wonderful thing, but it should be a considered, informed, and wanted decision by prospective parents. This is not to say that people who have children out of obligation cannot be good parents, or that willing parents cannot be bad ones, but underlying pressure can lead to resentment. I have seen this go wrong many times and have encountered too many bad parents in my lifetime. Story 34. A few years ago, I was hanging out with an old friend from high school who was pregnant with her second child. Her first child was maybe 2 or 3 at the time. At one point, she was complaining to me about her boyfriend, the father of her children, saying they couldn't stand each other anymore and that he didn't help enough around the house. We then briefly talked about her job at the daycare her son attended and how she received a decent tuition discount because of it. She said, "Yeah, we decided if we were going to have another child, we should do it now while I work there and we get that discount." I have not spoken to her much since that night. Not because of that, but because we were not very close in general, and they have had 1 more child since then, so 3 in total. I hope they are doing better now. However, I still find it difficult to believe they brought a child into a troubled relationship for discounted childcare. Story 35. I was watching a video about teenage pregnancy, and someone said the reason she decided to have her child is because her own mother struggled to have one, so she felt bad and decided to keep the child. Story 36. Because you want someone to give you unconditional love forever as the most important person in their life. That does not last if you have raised an emotionally healthy person. Story 37. One girl I knew dropped out of high school and got pregnant so she could have her own apartment in the public housing, receive a welfare check, food stamps, and just stay at home with her little Tony. The Welfare to Work initiative ended that plan for a lifetime on government assistance. She got married to avoid getting a job. That was more than 20 years ago. I have no idea if she is even alive, as she would be 64 now. Story 38. I think those children who are born primarily to donate organs or stem cells to a sick sibling. Story 39. In the hopes that it will improve their relationship with their spouse. Having a baby and having children in general, especially in the first couple of years, is absolutely the hardest time for any relationship if you are not rock solid. Having a baby does not fix anything. Other things that come to mind are having a baby so that you have somebody to take care of you when you are old. There is no guarantee that will happen. Your child might not have the money to take care of you if you do not have your own money and plans for your elderly years. To be honest, you might not even be close with your child at that point, or they might live far away. Even if you are close with them, many people love their parents and help them organize their life and find a good retirement home or nursing home but have no interest in having the parent actually live with them. There is no way to predict how your elderly years will pan out. It is unreasonable to have children and want to raise them for the rest of your life if you are only focused on that very end goal. Having children because all of your friends are having children. Having children because babies are cute. Having children when you do not want to just because your spouse does. These are often the causes of relationships filled with resentment. Story 40. To suggest they plan to give the child up for adoption by choosing a couple to adopt the child, asking the adoptive parents for money, and then declining to give the child up for adoption. Story 41. Hoping they will be the successful one in the family and break the cycle. Not necessarily why my parents had me, as I was completely unexpected and out of the blue. However, I will never get over the fact that both of my parents admitted that while they did not have any specific expectations, such as a certain job, income, or status in mind for me, and are perfectly fine with whatever path I choose in life as long as it is moral and safe, they both hoped and still hope that I will be better than everyone on both sides of my family, including themselves. As if the thought of not being enough was not already painful, now it is just excruciating. The responsibility of breaking a cycle is a burden I would not wish on anyone. Story 42. My cousin got pregnant intentionally at 16 because babies are cute. She had a miscarriage, which was very sad, but then had a viable pregnancy at 18. Story 43. I knew a girl in school who saw all the free items, a used car, baby clothes, toys, a crib, that a wealthier girl received because she became pregnant. She decided to get pregnant, thinking her family, who lived below the poverty line, would start providing gifts, a car, and everything else. When she realized her family was not contributing, she tried to convince people to sign a petition for a school-approved baby shower attended by all the girls in our class, meaning every female graduating in 2010, not everyone in fourth period United States history. Then there were rumors she was trying to get money for an abortion, and then she dropped out. Story 44. The typical one, so that you are not lonely when you get older. Many elderly women and men I have spoken to all had children and grandchildren but still ended up alone. Story 45. 1. To have someone to look after you when you age. There are no guarantees. Even if you put every ounce of effort into raising a child with whom you have a good relationship, at best you have essentially trained a child to become a willing caretaker. For profit, obviously. The unethical aspects. For your partner. The My Sister's Keeper model. It happens in real life as well and is very controversial. As hard as it is to have an ill child, bringing another into the world as a spare parts factory is too close to inflicting deliberate harm in my opinion. I am happy to debate this subject as someone fascinated with ethical dilemmas and reproductive science, but personally, I feel uncomfortable with the idea. Story 46. I had a coworker with some disabilities, and they had a child so someone would be able to take care of him when he is older. Story 47. To have someone who will love you no matter what, combined with having someone who will take care of you when you are old. Story 48. I have seen a recent case about a disturbed couple who had a child to record inappropriate videos and abuse the child. Cannot get worse. Story 49. My mother did it to upset her mother-in-law, who told her that she should not have children. My mother had 5 children. Her mother-in-law was correct. Story 50. To have someone who will take care of them when they are old, to make someone else happy, to try to save a relationship, to have a miniature version of oneself, to attempt to live vicariously through the child, to be less lonely, to have someone to donate organs for another child, and so on. Story 51. For the purpose of donating their organs or tissues to another person. This also applies to people who use their children for emotional reasons. Story 52. To be an organ or bone marrow donor for a previously ill child does not happen often, but it has occurred. It is utterly cruel. Story 53. My ex-wife was in the military and wanted us to have a baby so she could get a lot of time off. She worked in administration and knew many loopholes that the average service member was not aware of. She had planned to combine maternity leave with leave for house hunting during her transfer. However, her plan fell apart when I asked about childcare once she returned to work. She said she expected me to quit working, which was not acceptable to me. We are now divorced. Story 54. Many people have children thinking it will save their relationship. I am here to tell you it will not. I did not have a child for that reason. Having a child does not save your relationship. It only makes your problems more vivid. Story 55. Because they are supposed to. It is worse than any other reason because it compromises people's dreams. Story 56. Simply because they want the title of mom or dad, not to actually raise a unique individual to become an independent, self-sufficient, contributing member of society. As the saying goes, people want babies like children want puppies. Story 57. A former friend who is estranged from her mother wants to have a baby to give the child the love her mother never gave her. Story 58. To save your relationship, to fix yourself, and for the government benefits. None of those seem right, in my opinion. Also, purposely trying to trap someone. Story 59. Once a friend asked me if I wanted children, and when I said no, she became really upset and asked what meaning my life would have when I turned 50. Story 60. To create someone who will take care of your disabled child is not parenting. It is using one child to carry the burden of another. It traps them in a role they never chose and calls it love. But it is not love. It is exploitation. Story 61. Because they need someone to take care of them when they are old. This usually tells me that they have never had to care for an elderly family member because it can be really tough. Story 62. Might be an unpopular opinion. To carry on the family name. To pass along your genetics, although that may not apply to most of us. Story 63. Trigger warning. Incest and child abuse. This is going to disgust and horrify some people, but I encountered the most horrible reason ever at work. For clarification, I work at a courthouse. Although people have many reasons for having a child, such as for a spare part to help a sickly sibling, seeking unconditional love, or for extra government benefits, I still think this case is worse. This involved having a child because the older sibling was too old to satisfy the incestuous desires of one of the parents. This is an actual horrifying case from work. Sorry, everyone. Story 64. There are only a few reasons for having children, and if you cannot wholeheartedly say yes to these, then any other reason is not good. If the reason you want to have children is because you are emotionally and financially stable, you want to be a parent, and you are ready to make sacrifices for that child, then that is valid. Pretty much any other reason beyond this is likely not a good reason. Story 65. Having a child used for body parts for your other sick child is sickening. In my eyes, that is abuse. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.